Broadcasting welcomes you here tonight for coverage of the Southern 220, the final regular season race of the 12th season of the Great Lakes Racing Premier Series. The playoffs, the chase is looming on the horizon. Few drivers have locked themselves into said postseason, but we still have some spots left to fill here tonight at the conclusion of 161 laps. I'm Seth Cole alongside of Ross Brockman, and Ross, we know that 8 drivers going to be vying for those valuable 5 final positions in the playoffs. 5 could fall out of the cut line, 3 could move up above the cut line. You take all those scenarios and then you put them on a racetrack that is, to drivers and fans, known as the track too tough to tame.
Yeah, it's the perfect mix for a show tonight to watch these drivers their final test to make this chase. And yeah, we have a few of them are just single-digit points away from each other. So that's going to be basically, kind of at moments really heads-up racing between them. Then you have a few that have a nice, a decent cushion, just needing to maybe get a solid finish tonight to make sure that they lock in. And then my buddy Aiden DuPont, he's gonna have to have a Hail Mary night tonight, but still alive, and I love it. That's a chance for him, but it'll be fun to watch a lot of different styles of what you have to do to get your points in, but obviously also a trophy on the line in a long race too. So making sure you be smart about it and get to the end.
Now, long race, as you say, which means plenty of chances for these drivers to be leaving here tonight with that souvenir, the famed Darlington stripe. Pretty narrow racetrack as well, egg-shaped in terms of configuration. Turns 1 and 2 a little bit more compact than the sweeping 3 and 4. With that being said, you take a look at the starting lineup here. A lot of drivers up towards the front that currently are in good positions to either have themselves already locked in or advance their way into the chase. How important is track position going to be in the early going, with how difficult it might be to complete passes during the course of this race?
Yeah, it's ideal to obviously start up front, just because the first couple laps you'll have a lot of patience that I think gets everybody kind of single filed out, and then next thing you know, you just have to take your time making passes, and it takes forever. The only thing that I think could change a lot is I do think at some point, depending on when cautions fall, you can gain a ton of positions if you try something a little different on strategy. Obviously, we have a handful of tire sets in the pits that you could go maybe jump on them early to try to gain some track position, or maybe try to save tire sets. We've seen that in the past few weeks of GLR. So I think that there's a lot of different strategy moves to try to gain that track position. But yeah, it's obviously really tough on track, especially when everyone's straight up on the same strategy.
A few weeks, 1 season ago, took the championship. He is one of the 5 drivers already secured into the postseason. Only 1 victory so far this season. He'd love to be a multi-time winner going into the chase. Shares the front row with Zachary Henry, who's just above the cut line. Here we go. Darlington Raceway, the lady in black, ready to play her part into who's advancing into this Season 12 chase. You saw right there that David Reagan throwback. We're used to it being white and purple, but the brown and gold number 6 of Jackson Sims. Keep an eye on him and Matthew Weeks all night long. Those two came into this race separated by 8 points for the overall regular season championship.
Oh, and I hear a big slide in the... Oh, yeah. Handful of drivers that are in an incident already. Heard some tires squealing and then some damage. It looked like Eric Kepler, Neobone here.
Shiflett, I believe, might have been involved in... Oh, man. Look at that. The Casey Kane throwback there of Brent Kingcott. A lot of damage, smoke billowing out from underneath that Toyota, and that is huge because Brent came into this race in the crucial 10th position in points, only 3 points up on his KFS Motorsports teammate, Cy Jackson.
Yeah, it looks like a race-ending damage. At least be able to drive back to the pits, maybe get it fixed up, but only +3 on the cut line going in tonight. So that's, obviously, like I said, that when you're single digits, it's really kind of almost heads up with the guys that are around you in the in the chase standings. So it's gonna be tough for Brent to make it, I'm afraid. But yeah, we'll have to see what happened here. Shiflett and Woodall also on pit road here, so I don't know if they were involved, but obviously close quarters here.
Looks like maybe Woodall got a little loose in the entry of the corner there.
Yeah.
Right rear quarter panel of Eric Kemp, who mentioned that this racetrack very narrow, and that makes it also difficult if a wreck's happening up in front of you to be able to find a lane to be able to get out of harm's way. As you saw there with the onboard of Brent Kingcott, just nowhere to be able to go, is pretty much all exit routes completely closed up in front of him. Saw the
I don't know
64
how much.
Neobone and the 28 of Shiflett also involved in that. Some multi-car wreck, about a half dozen drivers.
And I'm not sure how much damage either of them had. Just a little bit of maybe a bump here. We'll see from Neobone here. We're just a little right rear bump and then a little on the nose there. I think that's damage you can fix and ultimately still race tonight. I think Shiflett, he's spent a few laps now on pit roads, so maybe a little more damage there than what we thought. I was just kind of looking, here our front runners. We saw Jackson Sims in that throwback in 6 jump up to second, and I thought you talked about Zach Henry and where he was at entering tonight. Plus 11 on the cut line here, up to 7th, just where he runs now. But I imagine he probably was. I don't know if he was thinking about it, but there's a bonus point for grabbing the pole, bonus point for leading laps. So obviously that is something that starting up near the front wasn't able to get the pole, but super close. Matthew Weeks was able to grab it, but yeah, the opportunity to lead the most laps, there's points for that. It's not a point for leading a lap, but leading the most laps, which might come in handy if you're one of those drivers that are trying to get in here tonight.
Well, might very well have been his goal, but as you can see, the points as they run with the hardship right there by Brent Kingcott, that drops him down to 12th. Zachary Henry currently up in the 7th position in the standings with a little bit of breathing space. So if he can keep it up front inside the top 5 all night long, chances are looking pretty good for him to be able to be one of the 10 drivers that advances. The green flag back in the air. Good launch there for Matthew Weeks. He's going to have about 3 car lengths back to what was a side-by-side battle for second, but Sims will quickly drive around the outside of Henry. Here comes the 9 of Brent Malone. He's also going to make quick work of Henry as he moves into that 3rd position. So it looks like there's a lot of grip to be had in the early going on the high side of 1 and 2.
Zach Henry just kind of maybe wanted to get through a restart, because obviously just losing spots on both the initial start and the restart so far. You can see how fast, just 1 lap in and already pretty much our top 8 are all single file. Our only battle really up in the top 20 right now is this one here. It's the 73 of Kyle Cooper gets around. It's the 10 of Hunter Brittle battling back there.
Cooper, of course, 1 week ago, becoming a multi-time winner this season, following up his first victory at the Legacy version of Atlanta with a victory last week at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. The elation of being a 2-time winner here in Season 12, but then the agonizing news as well. It wasn't enough to keep him mathematically in the hunt to have a long shot here tonight of advancing into the chase. But he said last week that's not going to stop him from being hungry and trying to get himself a 3rd victory here tonight at Darlington Raceway.
Madelinas here looking to the inside of McClellan. That's kind of a great spot there if you can get off of 4 alongside and then just kind of hope that the guy to your outside just gives you the break into 1. 96 kind of does, but he's got to stay on his toes with Cooper sliding in there and make the pass through 1 and 2. That's a tough pass. That's a nice job, though, by Kyle to get that done.
Hunter Madelinas going into last week's race at Charlotte, he was below the cut line. A solid podium finish moved him up to 8th in the standings, plus 18 coming into tonight. His teammate out of Spectrum Racing in a similar situation coming into this race, Elliott Henderson, he was 12th in points, minus 9. You can see on the scoring pylon, he has since moved his way up to the 6th position. And the last time we saw the points as they run, he is up above the cut line currently, is the 37. So a We'll see if he can maintain that spot as he looks to advance his way into the chase as well. And a battle here as that's Ashton Lawson going to make his way on by. I believe that is a Dale Jarrett throwback, if I'm not mistaken. We got a couple of UPS throwbacks with Sims throwing it back to David Reagan and Lawson throwing it back to DJ.
Sometimes you gotta go to Darlington and just ship it into the corner, so I guess that makes sense. UPS.
Exactly. Hey, I like the pun. How long did that one take you?
Nah, just that's my thought there. I was like, well, might as well.
Putting a one on the board for you right there. That was good.
McClellan kind of moving backwards here. Got passed by a handful of drivers in that lap. I think just got in the wall, both in 1 and 2 and in 3 and 4. Kind of, that's the worst part about Darlington is like I would always be so nervous about when. Every time you enter the corner, you don't know how much grip you're going to have. It's only going to get worse as the tires wear. He's kind of gotten back. Great job running that top there, but just maybe got his tires back underneath him.
Saw the 43 of Corey Abbott back there as well get the wall a couple of times on that previous lap. Kind of back to your point there with McClellan. Almost seems like if you get up there into the wall, the car's not handling. Well, that's not going to help any matters, and you're more than likely going to brush the wall a couple more times before you finally get those tires underneath you. We mentioned about the fact that there is a limited number of sets of tires for these drivers here tonight, and we've granted had that one early yellow flag, but if we end up trending green, are there some drivers that are going to be willing to use up all the good in their good years right here, the early portion of this run? Are there going to be other drivers that will kind of rein the horses back, try and preserve those tires for the long run, maybe stretch it a little bit further on their window than other drivers would?
The tough part is just like, I think you want to ultimately save as much tire as possible. I think that's going to put you in the best spot to maybe run as long as possible, because I think that's important. Green flag pit stops here are just so tough. Like, if you can prolong doing a green flag pit stop in hopes that maybe even if your competitors have to hit pit road and you can go farther, that maybe will save your race or get you a bunch of track position. But the other problem is if all of a sudden you go save tires for 20, the first 20 laps of a run, and then there's a caution. Oh, gotta stack up in the front stretch here.
And that's the 22 of John Linday, I believe. And he's going to get some help from behind by Wagner in the 57, who might have clipped another driver on the way by.
Yeah, that looked like just a case of maybe not being clear, but thinking he was clear in the 22. I don't know. We'll have to see what happened as Wagner is going to tow back to pit road.
Saw that the right front suspension on that machine was not driving in a straight line. Undoubtedly the toe knocked out of that car. To your point with the camera shot we had as it was happening live, almost looked like maybe, well, nope. 57 actually bounced off the wall, came down into the right rear quarter panel of John Leday's Dark Horse Mustang, and I think that might have been Justin Mons actually in the 20 that got clipped on the way by.
Day was even trying to give maybe even a little bit more room. Sometimes you do that just because it is so easy for what happened to Wagner, and you kind of anticipate there's a chance of that. And yeah, that's tough because obviously a caution comes out. You need to make sure you slow down and understand, or at least if you see an issue ahead and your competitors are slowing down. But then it's also really easy just to kind of look at the person in front of you and then not realize that there's cars stopped up by the wall there. But yeah, this is the moment that I was kind of saying before that caution came out. Like, if you've been saving your tires right now for 15, 20 laps and the field decides to hit pit road right now, this would then, kind of waste your time if you were saving your tires during that first run. Now, if you can save tires and prepare for that, but then also not lose track position, then at least you can maybe potentially not be penalized by a caution coming about halfway through a tire run and then everybody coming down. But this caution here, lap 16, I think this is a little bit early for coming down to use that first set. There's a handful of drivers down on pit road, but most of them I think are fixing damage yet. But so nobody pitting yet. I think you want to try to get at least 25 laps out of a set of tires, at least. But then, I think you can get as far as almost 55 laps on a tank of fuel, and if you go green, can you stretch the tires that far? That'll be something to see if we do go that far.
You see, with this being the regular season finale, the position that we will be putting a lot of emphasis on as far as the battle goes here points-wise is that 10th position. 2 points up is Elliott Henderson on Cy Jackson. Elliott right now running in the 5th position, Cy Jackson in the 13th spot. That might be the battle here tonight. You see Brent Kingcott. I was keeping an eye here just prior to that yellow coming out. Saw on the scoring pylon, they have pushed his car behind the wall. So the driver that came in pretty much as the target for the 3 below the cut line, involved in the early incident, didn't even make it 10 laps into this race. He is done for the night, and so too are his hopes of advancing into the Season 12 chase.
Battle, up front here for the lead with Weeks and Sims, not just in the race, but also in the point standing. So a little bit of bonus points for being number 1 in the points at the end of the regular season. So something to watch with those two as they battle it out here to be the top, both the race and in the points.
Get ready to go back green here. Lap 18 on the board. The Premier Series has been to Darlington 8 previous times. We have had 5 different drivers go to Victory Lane. 3 of them are in the field here tonight, and those 3 all start up inside of the top 8. The race leader Matthew Weeks, as well as Hunter Madalinas and Zachary Henry, who were side by side in row number 4 for this restart, still side by side down the back straightaway.
Another one of those restarts. Zach Henry just kind of, and we talked about, like, obviously he's 11 points up on the cut line going in tonight, so maybe just being a little more cautious. You saw what happened to Kingcott. You might think, like, okay, I got to make sure that I make it to the end of this race, because 11 points ain't going to do you much good if you can't finish the race. So right now, it had to be a little nervous if you're Zach Henry and you saw Henderson and Madalinas, who are also kind of around that cut line, go by you so far tonight. But I think staying up in the top 10 is going to be important here.
Great qualifying effort there for the 18 of Matt Durr as he continues to remain up inside of the top 10. Currently in 7th, qualified in 5th, is now inside quarter panel was Zachary Henry, able to hold him off, at least for the moment. And there's last week's winner, Kyle Cooper, as well as Ashton Lawson, trying to make their way forward, holding the final 2 spots inside of the top 10.
You can see here, this happens a lot at Darlington, but where Matt Durr is maybe just a little bit off compared to the drivers behind him, and you see the gap up to Madalinas where Durr is kind of maybe holding up the guys behind him. But you mentioned how hard it is to pass. You can be a little bit slower than the guys behind you, but also be fast enough that it's almost impossible for them to pass you here. Henry's going to look to the inside, try to drive it deep into the corner here, and have a chance to clear him off of 4. That pass done.
Quite able to do it, and that's kind of a thing too, right? If you're on that inside line, in the case of Kyle Cooper, if you don't complete the pass on Matt Durr, you're going to hope that there's enough space to tuck back up in line, because if you don't, I would assume that Ashton Lawson would be more than willing to fill in that slot on the outside line. You potentially could get freight trained here at Darlington.
Sure, be careful. Nice, that 73, we've seen this multiple times tonight, where it kind of rolls up to the outside off of 4, trying to get to the outside. It's enough of a run here to maybe look a little bit on Durr. I think that was kind of just a, hey, maybe, try to scare him a little bit, thinking like, I might look to your inside here. I always love trying to set up turn 2 here as we ride along the 73. Just try to get a great exit, set that exit up so you could drive it deep into 3 here to make this pass. Leaving it on each other.
Runs to doors here. Yeah, little paint traded between these two for that 8th position. Ashton Lawson wants to play. He's going to show the nose potentially for 3 wide. Thinks better of it.
Yeah, I think Lawson, that was a move to maybe kind of just hope that, those 2 on the outside would, one of them or maybe even both of them would give it to you just because you got position. But then in the end, I think he knew better and check back up, and Cy Jackson had a chance there to try to get around Lawson, but again, the fact of not being able to pass, we're sitting here, these 4 drivers having a ton of on-track action, but their running order hasn't really changed.
Love seeing these throwbacks. It's outside Jackson, the familiar black and gold, the Rusty Wallace Miller Lite Genuine Draft throwback, and we just saw a pass right there for the 14th position. That was Tony Manji going around Hunter Brittle. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that is the Pepsi Challenger throwback, the gold and white on that number 24. Manji, one of those drivers that's still looking for his first victory of the season, but he does know that he is going to go chase racing. Was one of the 5 drivers coming in tonight that was secured on points to advance into the postseason.
Throwbacks and points, point standing situations. People with a lot on the line. I kind of like. Everyone's dressed in their best and are prepared to go down as gentlemen tonight. That's what it just seems like with these, with the throwback schemes and the playoff battle looming behind the action tonight at Darlington.
A potential battle for second place closing up here. Mentioned that David Reagan throwback of Jackson Sims. He's got the Casey Kane throwback in his rearview mirror. That Christian Peterson, 4-time winner on the season. If I recall correctly, I believe that is a reverse Dodge SRT scheme that Casey Kane drove back in 2005.
Oh, and we just had a non-caution, but an incident with one of our, outside chance hopefuls. Aiden DuPont is now on pit road. I saw on the backstretch had some kind of issue. I think it included maybe Trey Holmes. Trying to see who that was, but we'll have to see the replay. But tough break for the 00, and like I said, a long shot chance. Yeah, here Trey Holmes, McLaren, McClellan, all kind of coming together off of 2.
I think that might at least be a debris caution, right? Cheez-Its everywhere. That 1999 Larry Pearson throwback. But that is a tough break. He was the long shot driver. Mathematically still had a shot of making his way in, but damage front end first into that inside wall. More than likely that is going to be his hopes of advancing into the chase over and done with as well. That inside wall back there on the back straightaway, there aren't actually any pit stalls there. All the pit stalls are on the front straightaway. There used to be a pit road back there. That's why we end up having an attenuator wall, if you will, that's kind of shortens up the runoff drivers have if they end up spinning off of turn 2 and down the back straightaway.
Yeah, and the way this track was kind of built, the idea of like, I know I always heard the story of like the banking that we are racing on really is just kind of was the fail safe of the original track. Everyone kind of was thinking you're going to race down on the apron. That's the fastest way around, and then really obviously it's shown that the racing surface really is the banking up at the top. So because of that, the downside here on iRace is obviously you're going to have moments where an incident like what happened to Aiden DuPont not be called as a caution because you're not out in the racing group when you have that incident. So ultimately an end to his night anyways. But yeah, if you're a driver that gets caught up in something and you don't get a caution, that can kind of end your night even if your car is still okay.
Brockman having a great run here tonight in that 9 machine. Got around a Manji Motorsports, trying to hold off the 12 of Zachary Henry. Right now, I think with the situation of Aiden DuPont having his issues, the early DNF by Brent Kincott, I think the goal for him now, just have a clean night. He came in above the cut line. He's got a couple of drivers to worry about inside Jackson and Elliott Henderson, but right now he is running ahead of one of those drivers and not too far behind the other. So I think that if he just kind of maintains the status quo, keeps the car in one piece, I think that might be the goal that he's got right now, just based off the scenario of where the rest of the drivers coming into this race around that cut line are currently situated.
Yeah, sounds easy, but you never know. Like, obviously we've had these moments now with a couple of there's a battle between 2 Fords here trying to battle up into the top 4 now for Madalinas around Henderson. They both kind of in that cut line situation, running top 5. That's going to be about what they need tonight to at least for Madalinas really just to secure his spot, and for Henderson just to put a little bit of pressure on Henry and inside Jackson.
Weeks has not really been able to open up that much of a gap on Jackson Sims. Sims has kept him pretty honest. Just a little over a second has been the gap about the last 10 to 15 laps or so. Not really pushing the issue, but not really holding back either, and also maintaining about 2 car lengths back to Christian Peterson. Matthew Weeks started this race from the pole position. You kind of look at his situation as well as those others that were already locked in, like Sims, like Christian Peterson, like Tony Manji. Do you think that these drivers might have had Darlington here tonight circled on their calendar with the mentality of must win, just in the fact that you know you're already going to be locked into the chase and you would love to be able to go into said postseason, in the case for Weeks and Sims as a multi-time winner, in the case of Peterson a 5-time winner in the season, in the case of Tony Manji a race winner here during the regular season?
It's always good to win. I mean, it definitely doesn't hurt, and I think if you want to grab momentum heading into the last handful of races after the reset, that's a good spot to be in. I think so many times you see drivers that kind of whimper their way into a postseason format, and then all of a sudden it just is so hard to come out of it. So a win tonight would be, like I said, it won't hurt for sure. I think it's ideal for some of these contenders wanting to set themselves up.
Kyle Cooper, when he ended up winning last week at Charlotte, it was on a call late in the race to take on his last set of tires. I've been watching our top 10, and the 77 of Jeremy Pienta has been slowly working his way up in through the top 10, now up looking to the top 5. 21 laps ago, under that last yellow, he actually came to pit road and took on a set of tires. He has since been carving his way through the field. The lap times are obviously showing it. As of right now, it looks like this has been a great call in order to gain him track position. The question is, when we get to the latter portion of this race, will he be hoping he had those extra set of tires available?
Yeah, I think for now, you kind of just hope that this goes green if you're Pienta. You know, you have the fresh tires now, and you hope that he's not, just because you have them doesn't mean you need to use them all up. You can kind of save tire a little bit, but also make ground up when you have fresh tires against the field like this. And yeah, he's solidly up into the top 10 now. I think if a caution comes out, he'd just put on tires and be down a set, but have that track position. But if it could go green, you wonder if he could just go a little bit farther and hope that if a caution falls or the next caution falls, it's after a majority of the drivers make that pit stop, so that way you're kind of a little bit closer to equal footing on your tire sets. You're definitely going to be down on a set, but like I said, I think you can go about 25. You know, you can break this up into about 25 to 30 laps on a set of tires. So if this goes long enough, you can kind of erase the need for that extra set.
And Jackson giving up a spot there to Shane Neiswanger. Shane's actually back on the charge here again on Kyle Cooper. Shane Neiswanger is another driver that had a little bit of pressure coming into tonight. 20 points above the cut line coming into this race. Seems like a manageable amount of points, but we saw what happened earlier this evening with Brent Kincott, so he's definitely got to make sure he keeps that thing out of trouble. He was the second lowest driver in terms of those that were trying to lock themselves in on points here tonight, behind Spencer Owens. Owens plus 40, and right now that's 23. Let me double check where he's at right at the moment. Currently in the 18th position. So at least for right now, Shane Neiswanger currently in 11th. Spencer Owens in the 18th position, just doing what they need to do to keep themselves that buffer to the cut line, secure themselves a spot in the chase.
My quick math before we went on the air tonight, I just kind of looked, and Owens with that 40-point cushion, like, ultimately just needs to beat one person, I think was the unofficial math that I had tonight. And obviously we had a couple drivers with issues early on, so it should be locked in for Owens. Well, Neiswanger, I saw he had to finish, you know, if he finishes 13th, that was kind of my unofficial math there, he should be good, and that's about where he's ran all night so far. So he's done a great job, it looks like, on just maybe saving his tires on the long run. We saw Kyle Cooper be pretty aggressive early on in this run with these tires, and Neiswanger passed him just a little bit ago, and I think that's just, you know, doing a great job of just saving his stuff and making sure he's in it for the long haul on this run.
Neobone, who was involved in an earlier incident, got the lucky dog under the last caution. Saw him go a lap down here under green flag conditions. Some damage still on the right front of his Dark Horse Mustang. As we jump back here, oh, that's a pun. I didn't mean for it to be, but it's a pun to Nathan Jump in the 15th position, trying to hold off Corey Abbott, Hunter Brittle, Spencer Owens. Looks like Abbott's kind of gotten this setup or this car figured out. We saw him the first run knocking down the wall a couple of times, now trying to work his way up into the top 15 in that gold and black number 43. Tried to draw a beat on Hunter Brittle, but nothing there off of turn number 2.
Neobone ahead. You talked about him going down some laps here, and he's got the wall a little bit. Everybody's got to get around him. I don't know if Abbott took tires, but obviously pitted on lap 15. So I don't know if it's a similar strategy to Pienta. He's not as close up to the front as Pienta is, but yeah, and I think his lap times don't seem to be as fast as what Pienta's been able to do. So maybe he didn't take tires, maybe just fuel, but we'll see if that. I think we're closing in on we're anywhere in the next 5 to 10 laps. I think these front runners are going to want to come down and make their green flag pit stop, and that's an opportunity there for some of these drivers to come down before the people you're racing around and get those tires early and try to jump them, or do you stretch this out? And I think that'll be where we'll see what Pienta does, if he wants to just stay on schedule with these guys, or does he go a little bit farther since he's got about 15 more laps of fuel in the car.
You're definitely starting to see rear grip go away for all of these drivers. I saw Christian Peterson sliding off of turn 4 as he was making his way around Blair Neobone a few laps ago. The onboard there with Jeremy Pienta saw the 12 of Zachary Henry getting squarely up in front of him. And a lot of things about this racetrack that kind of are taken for granted. One of the things is this isn't exactly a very long racetrack. This is under a mile and a half, 1.366 miles in length. So as you mentioned about the possibility, the gaining on the undercut, if you can get those couple of outlaps on fresh tires, that's the plus side. The negative side is if you pit too early and the caution comes out in the middle of pit stops, you're almost guaranteed to lose 1 lap, if not 2, if you're mid-pack to rear of the field. So it's a gamble.
Yeah, for sure. It's you always have the wave around to kind of save your race and get you back on the lead lap, but yeah, you'll lose all that track position. We talked about how hard it is to pass tonight, so I think, like I said, I think that you don't want to do a green flag pit stop here at Darlington just because of the opportunity to, such a big gamble. So I think going as far as you can is important. And like I said, I think fuel-wise, we can go about 55 to 60. Obviously, we've had a couple cautions in there, so just a little bit farther of a stretch here, depending on when they all want to make this pit stop.
Going to be our first green flag pit stop cycle if we indeed get to that point. And, I look at Jackson Sims just a little under a second and a half back. Hunter Madalena's 2.6, now make it 2.7 seconds back. What do you think? Could Madalena's, could Christian Peterson maybe with an undercut gain enough ground they could cycle to the race leader? Do you think that currently they're too far back that they wouldn't necessarily be able to take the lead, but maybe put themselves up closer to the 11 after his pit stop is complete and be able to battle for the top spot?
I think you'd want to do it by now. I think you'd want to make sure, just because, yeah, I do think they're a little far back. Obviously, you're going to be as fast as almost 2 seconds faster than the guys on old tires. So if you did come down, you'll be gaining that time pretty quick, but still it's a little bit of a gap up to where Weeks is. So you'd want to have a handful of laps to use those fresh tires. And I think, just by math here, I'm looking at where we're at. If you wanted to try to make this race a 2-stop race, you're going to kind of split it about 54 laps per run. So I think that's maybe what's kind of keeping some of these drivers from rolling the dice here and pitting here a little bit earlier, trying to short pit and get those tires on to gain track position. Here comes the 9 now. I think that, if you can get to lap 54, that kind of just splits the race into thirds. And if it by chance goes green for a while, you could potentially make this race on just the 2 stops.
You see Malone making his way down to the attention of his crew. kind of throwing down the gauntlet to see if anybody else is going to bite and make the dive onto pit lane as well. It's interesting, when Darlington was first opened back in 1950, it was advertised as a super speedway. You can kind of with the seams see 3 distinct grooves above the dotted white lines, but there's another 4 to 5 grooves down there on the apron, which all is in bounds, all legal if drivers wanted to venture down there. And so that makes an interesting entry into pit road. I was wondering what some of these drivers were going to do if they were going to try and merge onto pit road off of turn 4, or do in the case of what I think Brett Malone did, which was actually dive down to the apron into the entrance of turn 3 and ride it all the way around through 3 and 4 to have a more straight line, a little smoother line into pit road entry.
Yeah, and it's a tough, either way, kind of is not easy, you know, just because it flattens out so much and that commitment line is so far down. Here comes Cy Jackson in the 2, one of our playoff chase hopefuls, just outside the cut line -3. So huge moment here, just making sure that there's no yellow while these pit stops cycle through. Here comes a bunch more, including Neiswanger.
Yeah, Shane Neiswanger looking ahead. Christian Peterson coming in. Matt Durr as well. All drivers that were up there inside of the top 15. Peterson, the highest of the drivers so far to pit from what was at the time the 4th position. Trey Holmes was on pit road a couple of laps ago as well. Vincent Vanderhook is now onto pit lane also. See just how much longer. I think Jackson Sims might be pitting this time. Maybe Matthew Weeks as well. See both of them dropping behind Hunter Madalinas. Yes, indeed. 1st and 2nd place on pit road.
Give you the opportunity, if this does go green, to kind of split this race up if you want into a 2-stop race. Madalinas and Henderson, we've seen Madalinas be able to just go maybe a little bit farther than everybody this year, and he's gonna do that. Another lap here, gonna stay out. Here comes Henderson down, and Pienta's gonna follow. So I thought there was a chance that Pienta would maybe try to run. Ooh, gonna slow down there for Pienta, but I thought there was a chance he'd run longer just because he had the fuel, but he decided that he's going to want to try to keep this top 10 track position and grab tires with everybody else.
Connor Brittle, Kyle Cooper, last week's winner, Dominic Wright, all on pit road. So I believe that leaves us with 8 drivers that we are awaiting to pit road to complete this cycle. Madalinas, and boy, he cut it really close there. Those right side tires almost clipping the commitment cone on the way in, trying to get every little bit that he could there. Zachary Henry also down here with him. Spencer Owens is going to stay out and lead a lap. Corey Abbott going to stay out also. Not surprising to see there for Corey Abbott. He ended up pitting under the last caution, as did John Leday, who is also out there still in the 22, but I think it's safe to assume we'll see Owens on pit road. Yep, there he comes this time by.
Leday, we talked about making that pit stop on lap 15, but I don't know if it didn't look like they took tires like Pienta did. So their strategy, maybe just trying to run this a little bit longer since they do have the fuel, obviously pretty far back, just hoping for a caution here. It ain't a bad strategy, just to, you know, the worst part is once you do hit pit road here, you're going to be kind of vulnerable for a while until it kind of cycles all the way through almost to the next stop before a caution will come out.
See the difference right there, the older tires, the fresher tires. Shane Neiswanger just blowing the doors off of that 22 car as Zachary Henry will rejoin the field behind Cy Jackson, Elliott Henderson, Jeremy Pienta. So I don't know if it might be a combination, maybe a slightly slow pit stop there for the 12, but obviously those in front of him taking advantage of the short pitting, having those fresher tires, utilizing that out lap. Now, if you're Zachary Henry, you're hoping that this run goes long so that way you'll have the tire advantage the longer that the run continues.
These slower cars that are on the different strategy don't do anything crazy, and make sure you just get through it. Yeah, don't want to lose touch with Henderson here. If you're Henry, obviously having a little bit of a cushion on points on Elliott, but still, you know, he's been pretty close to Elliott all night. This is about the farthest back, and it's just because Henderson was able to hit pit road a little bit earlier than Henry.
You saw right behind him was Cy Jackson. Those are really the two drivers right now. I think that the battle for that 10th position in points is going to be between Cy Jackson with the earlier dive onto pit road. Now finds himself on the back bumper of Henderson, 10th and 11th, which I think points-wise gives the advantage to the 2 car. Henderson had a pretty decent gap between himself and Cy Jackson before the pit stops began, a little breathing space for that 10th spot. All of a sudden, the gap is closed up once again.
The moment of, it's so hard. You talked about saving tire on that first run, and if you can do that, it can pay dividends later in the run. It's so much harder to do that on the second run if it's after a green flag pit stop. The first thing you think when you get back out on the track is you have fresh tires, you're racing around drivers with older tires, or maybe you've just short pitted and you want to take advantage of the fresh tires. Next thing you know, you start using up your stuff, and all of a sudden 15, 20 laps into the run, you realize I've used up all my tires compared to that first run. Especially racing the track more, you're not around as much traffic as you were on those initial starts and the restarts of that first run. So you got to be careful here to not use up your tires. We talked about the idea of maybe making this a 2-stop race for some of these drivers. If you do that, you just got to make sure you can go as far as 55 to 58 laps as you did that first run. And if you use up your tires, the next thing you know, you only get it 40 out of them, then you're going to have to make another pit stop late in the race.
Top 3, well, what are going to be the top 3 when the 22 eventually hits pit road, 2nd through 4th, they've closed up. There was some pretty decent gaps between Weeks to Sims to Peterson before that cycle of pit stops began. Jackson Sims, I think he was about 3 to 4 car lengths behind Matthew Weeks when they entered the pit road together. He almost came out right behind the 11 when their pit stops were completed, and you can see right there now as Leday hits pit road. 0.8 of a second separating the top 3. When the pit stops began, we were looking at about 2.5 seconds separating the top 3. So those pit stops, I don't know if the 6 and the 75 were just a little bit quicker with their stops than the 11, but obviously you can see it is translated to putting them right back up here into the hunt of trying to wrestle the lead away from the defending champion.
We've talked about it with Weeks and how great he is on the long run and saving tire. I think that might be just part of this a little bit. Obviously, Peterson was able to pit just a lap before these drivers, so a lap before Weeks and Sims. So I think that was just enough to kind of gain a second or two to get close to this top 2. And then I think Sims is also just pretty consistent with his lap times all the time. So able to stay here with Weeks. He was 0.3 faster than Weeks that last lap, and grabbed the wall just a little bit, but I just don't know if that's Weeks just adjusting a little bit to making sure he saves the tires for this long run, or if Sims and Peterson have figured something out.
Matthew Weeks has raced in 2 of the previously run Darlington races here in the Premier Series. A 5th and a victory, an average finish of 3rd place in those 2 races. Started this race from the pole position. Easily at this point in time has led the most laps. Looking to head into the chase, defend his championship from 1 season ago, become a back-to-back champion here in the Premier Series, but looks in the rearview mirror, sees Sims, sees Peterson still continuing to loom, keeping him within half a second. It's Hunter Madalinas right now in the 4th position. Matt Durr continuing to have a solid night there in the 5th position. And Shea Neiswanger, we saw him just a couple of laps ago complete the pass around Brett Malone. Malone now under fire again, this time from Elliott Henderson. This will be for 7th.
Nice pass there, setting up off of 2. Driving into 3 and 4. Get around the 9 of Malone for Henderson. You see behind him, kind of just, that's the other thing that sometimes when you make that green flag pit stop, you come out here in the mess of things. I think there's pretty much everybody behind Henderson, Pienta, Henry, Cy Jackson. They're kind of in the mess of it back there, trying to get through this, some lap traffic, some 4 position that maybe we're on just a little different tire strategy, and that's a huge advantage if you can come out on the track for the next run in clean track and not have to race around a bunch of other drivers.
Interesting when you look at the situation for Brett Malone. Remember, he was the first one onto pit road to pretty much start that cycle of green flag pit stops. Those drivers that just went by him, and Shane Neiswanger and Elliott Henderson, we're talking about 3 and 5 lap fresher tires, 18 green flag laps so far for Brett Malone. Does it surprise you that we've seen that much fall off from the 9 that he ended up basically getting bypassed easily by both Neiswanger and Elliott Henderson this early into the run?
Yeah, that could be, a case of, like I said, you get out on those fresh tires and you're the only one on them. It's maybe easy to kind of burn up your stuff pretty quickly and not realize that just because you have the fresh tires doesn't mean you need to use them all up when you're the only one on them. And I don't know if that's something that happened to Malone there. And Cy Jackson getting really loose there up on the top lane, kind of stacking up everybody. I think if you're Cy Jackson, I was thinking about Zach Henry trying to stay close with Elliott Henderson. Cy Jackson kind of has to do the same if he wants to make sure that he can contend for this chase spot. And it's falling back a little bit, losing some track position here all the way back to 12th. You see a huge stack of drivers right behind him.
He was another of those early hitters during that green flag cycle. Now appears to be paying the price for it the longer this run goes on. Monge gets around him. Riddle going to now look to driver's right. You got Ashton Lawson back there, the lap car of Justin Mons, Tyler McClellan there as well. And you can also see that as he falls down towards the latter portion of the top 15, the gap between him and the 37 Elliott Henderson continues to increase, with Henderson moving forward, currently holding down the 7th spot. So Cy Jackson not necessarily in the position he would like to be right now. Still a long ways to go in this race, though. We haven't even reached halfway here tonight in the Southern 220 at Darlington. As good battling here, a bunch of Chevy bow ties, little door banging between Tony Monge and Hunter Brittle, as Brittle will make his way around the 24, making a march towards the top 10.
This is crazy how many of these cars got. Whoa! Hold on there for Lawson. You get loose off at 2 there. Nice save, and going to keep it, able to hold his position there in 13th. Closing up the 20 there. Is 7 laps down in Mons, so he's just kind of in this battle here, just making laps. Malone's going to get in the wall there and lose a couple more spots.
There, down the back straightaway, Tony Monge throwing a block on Ashton Lawson. We've seen those two rub doors and trade paint a time or two this season and in seasons past, as they move up to 11th and 12th place. And yeah, it just looks like right now, Brett Malone, those tires have gone away, and he's kind of in a way kind of being the stopper for the rest of the field, stacking them all up there as Nathan Jump, now Kyle Cooper, Spencer Owens, all going to make their way by. Got to be a helpless feeling if you're Brent Malone, because you probably felt like you were flying past drivers when you had those fresh tires. Now you're going the wrong way on the opposite side of the tire spectrum.
Henderson look to the inside of Neiswanger. I think Neiswanger going to try to, I just heard him key up that he was going to maybe let him go here on the next this next corner. Obviously a little difference in tire here, 2 lap fresher tires for Elliott. He's going to make that pass. Another guy on just a little bit fresher tires made our 3-car battle up near the front. A 4-car battle is Hunter Madalinas now. He's able to get around Christian Peterson. He's been running kind of the fastest lap times. Was kind of the last to pit of the top 5 there, and he's got just a little bit fresher tires because of that, and he's able to catch up to our top 3 and start battling here.
Henderson's one of 3 drivers that has run every single Darlington race here in the Great Lakes Racing Premier Series. In those 8 races, still searching for that first checkered flag, but a 6.8 average finish, and right around that mark here tonight, as he made his way by Neiswanger to move up into the 6th position, as we ride on board with Hunter Brittle, who has now cracked the top 10 and looking to advance another spot, trying to set up the 77 of Jeremy Pienta, who again, remember, is one set of tire in arrears to everybody else, but it looks like that gamble, that call, it managed to get him up inside of the top 10, and when he pitted with everybody else, he's been able to maintain said spot. So at least for the moment, that gamble is panning out. Now what he has to hope for is that we continue to run this race green, because if we end up getting some late race restarts around 30 to go, 20 to go, that might be the point where he's going to think, wow, those last set of tires would have really come in handy.
Yeah, and the other thing that we kind of noted is the idea that some of these drivers that made those pit stops, you know, they can't really catch up through this field because they're all just in a stack of cars right now. So at least Pienta being able to pit a little bit earlier, he can then you know, pit with everybody else. He's up in that top 10 with some clear track and able to hold his track position.
Jump heading together a solid race here tonight. 13th place right now. Trying to get up there to Ashton Lawson. 12th position, Cy Jackson still trying to hold on. It was last week we ended up having Spectrum teammates that were running in 10th and 11th in points going into that one. Elliott Henderson over Hunter Madalinas. This week's race saw KFS Motorsports teammates in 10th and 11th with Kingcott over Cy Jackson. If you're just joining us, Brent Kingcott involved in an early incident out of the race. He will not advance into the chase. Jackson Sims right now the only driver of the team that is guaranteed that he will be participating in the postseason. So you got to wonder what the pressure is for Cy Jackson wanting to have two representatives of that team battle for the championship. And there you see it right there. 2 points, 2 positions is all that really stands between him and Elliott Henderson to at least tie for that 10th position. 3 positions to jump the 37.
Don't know how much do you know when you're out here racing, if you're able to do the math, if you have, you know, a teammate that's out of the race that can help you with that, or if it's just racing straight up. But you kind of start to wonder, do you make a decision on this final pit stop, or make decisions based on when the cautions fall to just make sure that it sets you up for the best shot? It'd be really interesting to see what happens if you know, as we get closer, if any of these drivers try something desperate just to try to score points in the end.
Yeah, I like what you said right there, because I was kind of wondering the same thing. Obviously, the hardship for Brent Kingcott out of the race, but he would have the opportunity not only to see where everybody's running, but of course, you know, to tune into our broadcast, see the live points as they run and everything, feed that information to Cy Jackson, and maybe collectively KFS Motorsports can formulate a plan, as you say, to try and turn the fortunes, cut into that gap between himself and Elliott Henderson in the closing stages to be able to clinch that 10th and final spot in the chase.
Pienta kind of falling back a little bit here. Manji in the 24, Lawson and Jump all right here. So the first time now for Pienta to be on the other side of this, where he's maybe got a little bit older tires, or at least used up his tires compared to these guys. They all kind of pitted on the same laps, but I think I don't know if that was something that Pienta just used up his stuff a little bit more. But has some company here, all trying to get into the top 10.
What we saw when we were on board with Hunter Brittle is, whoa, Lawson into the wall right there, right in front of Nathan Jump. But we saw Jeremy Pienta actually get up into the outside wall. We talk about that legendary Darlington stripe. It seems like for the most part for these drivers, you go up there, you scuff the outside wall, you're able to continue on. That's a pretty good shot right there. I mean, that's what I was just going to ask. Is there a borderline between a kiss to the wall and a slap to the wall that can actually affect the way the car handles the rest of the run? Oh, wait a minute, hang on, Pienta, great save. Maybe a little assist from the wall as Manji tried to shoot it up the middle between him and Ashton Lawson. Very nearly just had our second caution of the evening.
Yeah, that gives you a little right front damage from Pienta. You were just asking about the damage and what that does. I don't think that helps having a little bit of damage on your car, but at least here at Darlington, it maybe doesn't matter as much. You're always going to have moments of hitting the wall, but that was a heck of a save Pienta there to hold on to that thing and not ultimately spin down in front of jump there and keep it safe, but immediately under attack now for position. You can't breathe here. As here comes, what was that? It was Cooper trying to slide off the corner there and get by him. Here comes Cy Jackson in the 2.
And never mind the damage. You got to wonder too that slide couldn't have done any favors for the tires, specifically that right rear tire, which of course a lot of pressure put on the longer the run goes of trying to get the power down when you exit off of the corner. This racetrack, you can kind of almost physically see it. There's a bit of an elevation change as you kind of come down off the turn onto the straightaway and then climb up the turn in the entrance of 3 and 1. So a difference in elevation can make the car get a little bit squirrely as well when you're trying to throttle down, get that rear grip to be able to get that straight line speed on the front and the back straightaways.
We're seeing now Cy Jackson's trying to. There's
oh, wait a minute.
Tony Manji.
Tony Manji?
Yeah, huge damage down on the inside here. He's running 11th. Big slide off of 2 and maybe getting the inside wall. Kind of saw similar to, Aiden DuPont got in that incident on the backstretch and no caution was thrown.
You saw him down and out of harm's way, so race officials will keep it green here at Darlington, but we saw him just moments ago try to shoot up the middle, 3 wide for position. This is him all by himself. Let's see what happens. Ultimately, some connection problems there. I'm not sure how he ended up in the inside wall, however. Did he maybe reappear inside of somebody else? Because it almost looked, obviously with him disappearing, we can't see the skid marks, so that's a bit of a mystery right there, how that damage came about.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it had the damage popped up before hitting the wall there, unless it, for some reason, reconnecting, like you say, next to another driver, or if it was into the wall, and then, I don't know, that was weird, but obviously was connected potentially to that connection issues. And unfortunately ends his race, but that's another position kind of in the middle of the pack there for like Niswanger, who's trying to lock in tonight. Henry and Jackson trying to stay close to Henderson here, so interesting development to have a position up in that top 10 kind of go away there with the issue.
I never want to have a connection problem, something that's out of your control like that, but I guess if you're going to have it happen on any night, better to have it happen here this evening in the regular season finale, a night that you were already mathematically locked into the chase, rather than have it happen next week when we go to the Texas Motor Speedway, when you absolutely kind of have to set the tone of consistency with the difficult tracks that are going to be coming up here in the postseason.
They're trying to get those mechanical issues out of the way before they are magnified in that chase. There's Zach Henry, who's ultimately done a great job here on the second half of this run to pick up into the top 6 here. He's got some pressure from the 20 of Justin Mons, who we talked about, is 7 laps down. So Mons has got a little bit fresher tires, so Henry's just going to let him go there, not battling for position, but at least staying close enough for Zach Henry to not lose any points. I think right now just got to get through this last pit stop if this thing goes green, and potentially any cautions.
As you say, doing exactly what he needs to do. Came into this race 11 points to the good, trying to lock himself as the only representative for NorCal Racing here in season 12 in the chase for the championship, as we're on board with Shane Niswanger. You mentioned for him, I think you said, what, about 13th with where he needed to be in order to secure himself. He's been able to keep himself well above that cut line, as he currently is inside of the top 10 in the 8th position. Another driver that hasn't necessarily been flashy, hasn't necessarily shown race-winning speed, but doing exactly what he needs to do, getting in the position he needs to be in, maintaining said position, and more importantly, just keeping the car in one piece, because a couple of drivers here tonight have not been able to do it, and we now see them on the minus side of the cut line.
And shout out to Shane in this 49 of ultimately being the best on the old tires. Every time I look up, he just ran a 31.6. Everybody else was 31.7s, 8s, and 9s. So he obviously has done a really good job of just keeping the tires under him. I remember that first run, he kind of was like just ran in 12th and 13th the whole run, and then by the end of it, he was able to get all the way up to 11th and 10th, battle for 10th, and now here, into this run all the way up to 8th. So it just seems like doing a great job of conserving the tires and getting the positions at the end of the run. I think if this race was 400 laps, he maybe win this thing.
You talk about lap times. One season ago, in the season finale, came down between Matthew Weeks and Hunter Madalinas for the championship. Here in this season's regular season race, Madalinas has not only made his way by Jackson Sims now up to the runner-up position,